So hello, welcome back. Today we are going to continue with our work on the on our drop-down menus essentially. So what we have done last time is to think about a good way how we can implement a drop-down menu system here. And let's quickly remember that, and let's look at the notes that we have done here. So we had this idea for a general drop-down layer. So the idea was that we actually have some kind of complete overlay layer, which is mostly transparent, and which allows us, because it stretches over the complete screen, to render drop-down menus at any location that we need it. Because the idea is that we don't have only one drop-down menu potentially. We might also have like context menus, which are essentially drop-down menus. We might have the main menu bar, but we might also have kind of secondary menu bars in different panes and stuff like that. And so the idea was, and as I have written it down yesterday, was to create a separate frame buffer, which we will clear to transparency, because as it is an overlay, it cannot have a non-transparent color, because otherwise it would just obviously overlay everything. Essentially, we would see nothing else. And the idea, so we have this transparent overlay, and then at certain points on the screen where it is needed, we can then render dynamically these drop-down menus. And the drop-down menu itself will have to provide its own location in screen coordinates, in screen space, so we really precisely know where to actually render our menu. And so between yesterday and today, I was quite busy with all kind of other things in life, but I also managed to go a small baby step further in implementing this concept, and I can show you where we are at the moment. And while it loads up, I will just quickly send a welcome message to the chat, so that everybody gets, first of all, a warm welcome, and second of all, gets a little bit of an overview of what we're going to do today. Welcome to today's stream. Yeah, but I should not type, because that's also showing up here. I will show you just in a second. Welcome to today's stream. We are continuing work on our drop-down menu system today. On our menu system. And let's see how far we come beyond that. I am not sure if we can get very far, because this whole drop-down system is a bit involved. But I think when we have it, it's nice to have it, and to also be able to expand on it later. So I will quickly show you where we are at the moment. So in fact, there is already this overlay rendered, but as it is fully transparent, you just don't see it. But as you can see now, here we have the first kind of draft of this, of what will be the drop-down menus. And so what I did is I came up with the kind of first very simple and most basic implementation to actually move in the right direction in a productive way, but not to overwhelm ourselves with too many features at once. So as you can see, first of all, the location of the actual drop-down menu is slightly off. I mean, it's not completely completely wrong because it's following the location of the parent menu item, like in general, but the offset is wrong here, so it should actually be left aligned. So it is whatever, what is it, 8 or 16 pixels too much to the left actually. And this is consistent, but it's already kind of reacting to the hovering with the mouse over such a menu item, and yeah, so that's the first step. And I will show you the code how this is done, and I suggest the first thing that I will try to fix now is obviously this small offset issue, and I think this will be a nice entry for today so that we get kind of warmed up. And yeah, I guess then we will just take it from there, and we will then try to either already render all the actual menu items, or let's see how many other challenges come up during this implementation here. Okay, so let's look at how this is currently implemented. And I think here we are already at the right place. Yes, so this is the render drop-down overlays function, and it is just a part of our main frame function here. It's the doFrame method that you have already seen, and I just added it here literally at the end of this frame, so it's the last thing that is kind of actively rendered before everything is then presented to the default frame buffer. So this is where it's called, and what's going on here is very similar to how we render in other places. We just retrieve our width and height. So in this case it is really just the screen width and the screen height, so there is nothing special here. So this frame buffer is essentially the same size as the default frame buffer. So yeah, you could argue we could just use the default frame buffer, but I would argue against that and say no, but the default frame buffer is really just like kind of the end product. It's just where everything lands after composition, so to say, but we will still reserve a separate frame buffer. I think this is just better to do that. Okay. Yeah, then we essentially, this is just a quad still. We just bind the correct vertex arrays. We clear the frame buffer, as I said, and here now is kind of the trick. So I can also demonstrate you. If we set this not to full transparency, it would look like this. So it should have now a like semi-transparent red tint, and it should really stretch over the whole screen. And so this is how this looks like. I mean, this is kind of like an probably interesting effect in itself, as you can see, but it's not really what we want. So this is why we set it to full transparency. And yeah, before I had it here to 0.1, which is very, very low opaqueness. But yeah, I had this for debugging purposes, but we actually can now clear it to a full transparent black, so it is just totally invisible. And yeah, the trick is really, it's this frame buffer clear to transparency, and then we render it into this frame buffer. We just orient ourselves at where should we do it, and then at the end we just split this whole complete screen sized frame buffer onto the screen. And as the background is essentially transparent, the only thing that we see is actually our drop-down menus. And the nice thing is now, if you can imagine that for some reason we would have one menu open here, currently it just closes down whenever you move away with the mouse. We might keep that, or we might fix that. I'm not sure about it, but in any case, let's say this would stay open. We could implement it that way, but then we could still have a right click here and, for example, have another drop down menu here and one here, and we would all render it into this one overlay frame buffer at once. So this leaves us room if we need in the future, whatever, 7 drop down menus at the same time in different locations. Or for example, here on this panel, we might have a local menu here. So we could also open one up in that area, and at the same time in that area, if that would be needed. We're now set up to do that. At this occasion, I will probably also just do a quick kind of overall check if our basic functionality still works, if something's broken, but it doesn't look like that. Let's open a few more windows here. So the camera also still works. So we also can pitch and look down. Okay. And the cameras are still local to each other. Okay, good. So far, so good. So then let's now continue with actually fixing this offset here, because that is a bit wrong. That's what it is. It's just too much to the left. And so this is where I left off. And I'm not completely sure now what is the correct fix, because I'm actually a little bit surprised to have this issue now, because I would think that the code that renders this drop-down rectangle should be correct. So I'm not fully sure why we are actually offset to the left so much. But yeah, let's try it out. I will probably now just make a quick check if I just move it now by 16 pixels, if that actually makes a difference, or if we are having another issue that somehow we're off at some place anyway. This should not be a good solution, just to kind of guess a value and then say, well, yeah, that's good enough. But I just want to see. Okay, I mean that would now solve it, but I still want to understand why we have these 16 pixel offset currently here. Okay. So let us see. Okay, so the 16 pixels are really super exact. I mean, it's really that. And so let's try to derive this. Why would that be the case? So I essentially kind of borrowed the code of the actual hovering of the menu item, and this is copied over. This is just that code. So we have the horizontal offset -4 plus the half of the item width, and then we essentially offset it again by +4. I would argue now, just that I see that this is anyway not necessary. I think arithmetically that should be the same. Let's just try that out in the actual render top menu code. It's just a small little thing, but I think this just looks stupid to do it this way. And of course we have also to do it here. And the drop down menu we will also remove here. Okay. Let's just run it once. Yeah, okay. As I suspected, this doesn't make a difference, which is good. And here we don't need it anymore because we have a separate function. Okay, can get rid of that. Okay, let's go back to our actual function. Render drop-down overlays, here we are. And I will try to understand why that would actually work. So the horizontal offset adds 8 pixels to the accumulated text length. And the accumulated text length is a concept which adds the length of each text of each menu item together and adds this margin of 24 pixels in between them. So we know the amount of horizontal offset we have to move before we render the next menu item or the next hover background for a menu item, stuff like that. So this makes sense, and this works well, as we see when we render the menu items. So the idea was, if we know, so what we want to have, I mean, what we want to achieve is essentially what you saw now. It is to be flush with this hovering background, because otherwise it just doesn't look kind of cohesive. It doesn't look like it belongs to this menu item. But if it's looking like that, just don't mind the color now. It's just not the nice color, but it seems like, okay, it's totally clear to the user that this is now the drop-down menu for the game objects, I would argue, and for settings and so on and so forth. So if we say that it is a goal that we have the same left offset as this hovering background, I would argue that it is totally fine to use the same offset, right? Which does not work, because if we just use the same offset, we are too much to the left. So I mean, what does make sense, and I'm really just thinking out loud, is that the item width is, oh, I'm just wondering, where does the item width come from? Maybe this is just, I think I know what could be the problem, because the item width, so this is the actual, so this is the text bounding box, the text BB. We calculate it here, and we see then how many pixels the item width is. And then we essentially stretch it by 16 pixels, and we just give it a fixed height of 32, because that's just the complete height of the top menu anyway. Okay, so this means we have an item width that is whatever it is, whatever it is. But I think the problem is coming from this difference here, right? Because we just say that the scale matrix in its width dimension, its horizontal dimension, is the same width, so that's always constant. But here we are now not adding 16 pixels, but here we're adding 48 pixels, obviously. And does that somehow make the difference? Because here we're still using the same item width, so this is kind of constant, so that makes sense. But to scale it, oh, does it make sense? Because we scale it actually by a factor of 4, right? If I'm not mistaken, is it? No, by a factor of 3 actually. 3 times 16 is 48, if I'm not totally wrong. So the width, the actual scaled width is 3 times as big. So does it really make sense to have the offset by 16 pixels then? I would argue not. I mean, it's also very late here and I had a long day, so maybe it's just me being stupid and being whatever, exhausted. I'm not fully sure if I can derive that what that would actually work. I mean, it seems to be kind of stable. Let's probably try to resize the whole thing and see if then everything falls down completely or does not. Let's see. So stretch it. Yeah, okay, that's what I thought. Look at that. Super bad. And it kind of, you see the error gets worse and worse. I mean, here it's kind of correct, or like it is correct. But here it's already off, and one could argue it's off by, is it 16 pixels? I think it's more. And it looks like this is now essentially, I think the error is doubling. Yeah. Because if this is the error, I'm using now my fingers as a ruler. So this is how far it is away, and this is essentially, yeah, it's almost doubling. It's, yeah. I mean, it seems there is some error. I'm just wondering if I'm also stretching in that direction. Yeah, okay, you see. Okay. Yeah, now this really breaks. So this is all things that we need to fix. This is of course totally unacceptable to work like that. So we will have a lot of fun fixing that in the next minutes, hours, hopefully not, but probably days. Okay, let's see. Let's try to understand what's going on. So now it seems like we have, for example, it seems we are almost on the same width as originally. But I think actually this problem is maybe really just a resizing issue anyway. So I think we can just do the check resizing, and maybe if we just add this here and say let's just do this in a very similar way, but just for the actual correct frame buffer. Frame buffer, what's it called? Drop down overlay panel. That's exactly what we want, and we just need the full screen width, and we need the full actualized editor state screen height. So maybe this one problem is already solved. So in terms of when we change the screen size, might totally be the case. Might totally be the case. Let's stretch it. Yeah. And I'm also quite sure if I change the height, it will still work. Now, okay, yeah. So this was an easy fix. This was an easy fix. Yeah, and we probably just stick with the 16 magic number, but I'm not feeling right about that. Let's invest a few more moments to understand this, and if we don't, probably just move forward and write ourselves a to-do. That's also fine. That's also totally fine. So that means we need to go to resize. No, render, drop down. Okay. Why is the magic number 16 actually? I mean, why does it work? Oh, let's make something that must in any case work. It's maybe even stupid, but just to be sure. If we just really make the item width the same as the actual overlay, it will not look nice, and it will just be this small band that hangs down under the main menu. But let's just see if that will work. Yeah, okay, yeah. So far so good. And let's try to understand the actual. So if we double this, what does it mean? If we double this, then 8 is the right number. Could it be that the factor is always 1/4 of this item width offset? But why would it be 1/4? I mean, let's just try it out if this formula holds. Yeah, it seems to hold. There you go. So let's say if this would be 64, then it would be is it 24? No, what is it? Okay, is this even divisible? 64 by 4? 16, yeah. Does it make sense? No, it doesn't. Okay. No, that would be too much to the right now, right? Right, too much to the right. No, still to the left. Okay, it's interesting. Yeah. Okay, but if it's okay, 64 by 3, 21, 64. If this is 48, if it is factor of 4, then it should be 12 actually. No. So I think the problem is, and maybe we will really kind of change this now. In general, so the problem is that our quad geometry is centered. It is not offset to be flush on the left edge and on the top edge. It is centered. And I think what we should do, we should introduce a pivot or anchor point to our quad. So when we create it, you can also have a quad that is actually that has its pivot point not in the kind of center of gravity, but has its origin, if you want to say, in the top left corner, because then it makes all these kind of calculations just much easier. But now I just need to think what is the better way to do to actually enhance our quad and our quad creation factory system to have a different pivot point, because I think that could be quite involved, or maybe not. For sure we would lose our one and only quad vertex array, because we would then have several. That's one thing that's not it's not so nice. The other thing is that that we would probably also need to change this in a lot of places, so that's just not so nice. What is the alternative? The alternative is that we just actually understand what's going on here, which is probably good anyway. So I think, yeah, I would stick a little bit around here to really understand the correct kind of ratio. So why do we need to offset it like that? And if we want, we can do the quad pivot later. On the other hand, it would just be so practical to have this. Maybe let's just quickly check if we can have this pivot in the quad vertex array like easily, or if it's just really painful. Let's see. So the quad vertex array is currently just a single item in this global state. So that would not work. Let us think. I mean, the best idea is probably to have, how do we do that? I mean, we could be very naive and we could be very kind of super simplistic and say, well, we just have two kinds of quads. Because that's actually also what we know now. That's also what we need. I mean, we know we need, or there is a certain practicality in having the quads being centered, and so that we need it, we'll just keep that. Because if we now move all the quads generally to be top left, which we could also think of, and that's just it, that's just a convention. Every quad in our whole system here is just top left aligned, and that's it. That will completely break the editor, and we would need to go through some pain to fix it, but it could also be kind of like an interesting proposition. So we could just say, well, that's the rule. I mean, that's it. We'll just do this in this way. The alternative is, like on the complete other end of the spectrum, is that we have really like an open-ended, we give kind of the user an open-ended possibility to have all kinds of vertex arrays with all different kinds of pivots, and it's essentially just like importing a model, and the user just have to give an ID or something, and we could also just make a pool for like a mesh pool. We could also have these quad pools, and in the end we could also say the quad is anyway a mesh. Yeah, what's the best thing to do? Yeah, I mean, I think we already see that it is not a super quick win, and I think it also doesn't make sense to completely dump it down now. Let's probably just stick with the centered quad array for now, quad vertex array, and let us see how we can do that. I mean, what I may do is I can see if that will work. I can probably make a small drawing here if I can. Let's see. Maybe I cannot because it's probably not. I'm probably not able to actually plug in my wonderful drawing pad now. I'm probably not, because we need. Yeah, okay. Let's just not do that now. I'll prepare it for the next stream because I think it would be really practical to be able to draw these kind of things for the viewers and also for myself. But anyway, it's probably not do that now. So we have the item with so let's probably just say that we have auto so the arithmetic is not that complicated. I mean, essentially it's always just the half of the width and this should make you flush to the left side, right? Because that's just the offset. Yeah. Because if you don't offset it, it will 0 will be in the center, and so if you are already on the left edge, that means you would only see half of the quad. Okay, that should be it. So if you probably introduce a hover width, then this is just that now. Then we have the drop down width. And for now we will essentially artificially now we will just make it like 100 pixels. Yeah, it doesn't really matter because we anyway will write it to do. This should be dynamically calculated for the longest menu item, because we cannot draw direct smaller than the biggest menu item is wide, right? Because then it would look weird, because then the text for the menu item would be like looking and would be rendered beyond the actual confines of the drop down menu, and that's just not looking professional. So we will now, for the experiment, we will just say the drop down width is always 100. Okay, so that means that, I mean, we just actually need that anyway for us. Just need that for like reference anyway. So then we need the drop down width. And then we are just super sneaky and we just say, well, it is the actual age offset. I will keep that, and then it's just drop down width divided by 2, so we get the half of the drop down width. Hey, come on. Okay, let's just check. Let's just help ourselves and look at it in action. Okay. I'm currently just trying to check if the offset, I mean, it's wrong, but is it like wrong in a consistent way? I would eyeball it and say it is. Yeah, it is. And the question still remains why it is so wrong. Because the interesting thing is that it's actually offset too much to the right now. So it's not too much to the left, but it's actually wrong to the right, which kind of puzzles me. I don't really understand why that would be the case. Because the offset is actually completely the same, is it? I mean, it's not really, while I'm thinking about it. So if we say render top-down menu, we're on the top menu. Does that even make sense what I'm doing here for the background? I mean, it doesn't look wrong, but it's actually, is the background hover element actually really accurate? I am not totally sure, no? So yeah, okay. Yeah, so but it is consistent at least. I mean, I do not see any further kind of running errors or something. It's not growing in a weird way, it's not growing in a wrong way. It's consistent, it's correct. Okay. But could we do this in a better readable way? Because I'm currently not really happy on how I formulated this. I mean, what I wanted to do is actually to say, well, the width of the text, which is the raw value here of the item width, okay, I expanded by 16 pixels. So this is why it is also consistent, obviously, because the item width grows with the text. And then we give it a constant push. So we make it wider because we say, yeah, we don't want to be super flush. I mean, we can just try this out. If we just say it's +0, it should be just as long as the text is. Yo, hey, Mbossi, hey, good to see you. Cool. Good to see a familiar face. So see, I'm kind of struggling with my own thoughts, but okay. So this is still consistent here. Game objects now flush. Okay, that's fine. So this was just proving to ourselves that this is what it does, and that's actually fine. So if we now say that the offset is, what I found a bit weird, why what I did here is that here I'm scaling by item width +16. So essentially I'm creating essentially a hover width. Yeah, doing good. Today was a hard day, like for other life matters, and it's kind of late already here in Europe. So yeah, it seems I'm kind of slow thinker now, and I'm chewing on this issue since some minutes already. But otherwise, yeah, very good. Thanks a lot. You also doing good? All fine on your end? So 10 p.m. over here. Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's actually then you are a little bit earlier. Actually, yeah, here it's 11 p.m. So yeah, but so it's fine. I'm kind of allowed to be a little bit more tired. I'm allowed to be 1 hour more tired. Um, yeah, UK time. Yeah, sure. Yeah. So we are. Yeah, I'm kind of GMT +2. So Western Central Europe essentially. So. Um, but it's not on the complete other end of the world or something. Yeah. So 1 hour is just. It's not. It's not a big difference then. Um, Good. Um, so let's create something like a hover width here, and let's say that this is actually the. Let's probably also call it the text item width. I think that would make sense, and then we can create this here, and we'll just rename it to text item width, so that it's a little bit more clear to read, I hope. Because the problem with all these offsets left and right and center, and it's 16 here and 8 there, it's just then it's just not so easy to cope. No, I don't think so. Why? Do you feel that the danger is big? I mean, I'm not a NeoVim plugin specialist, so maybe I'm completely off. But do you feel that this would kind of bring you down a spiral of death, where you would completely go off the rails? I don't think so, right? I don't know. But I was thinking what you said last time. I believe about your Steam product. That you said the actual kind of editor is more work than the core of the product. And I was thinking, yeah, that was. I can imagine that. And by the way, I looked it up, and it looks really cool. And I think it has a lot of good critiques. So thumbs up and congratulations. Yeah. So to that anyway. But yeah, I can imagine. Then you're not actually working on the core product, but still it's kind of like taking so much time that you probably did not expect and did not plan to invest. So yeah, I think this is one of the kind of fates of development that yeah, we fall into these kind of trapdoors, and we never planned for. And maybe yeah, so the new Vim plugin maybe you end up in some kind of hell, whichever it is. I mean, I don't even know. Is it like it kind of creates such a plugin? Is it more like really kind of development work, like imperative coding of complicated logic, whatever it is, or is it more like making it behave to fit into the environment of NeoVim? And because you mentioned config.hell, is it more that, and you have to fill out kind of a lot of forms to make it conform or something like that? Okay. Okay, so I think this is okay. I think you referenced it also in our last stream and in chat, where I said you try to kind of make it good, kind of make it perfect, and like move everything into a library, move everything into a framework where it seemed to fit, but then it kind of really got exhausting, right? And it's overwhelming. Yeah, I mean, I fully signed it. Yeah, that's a problem, and it's really kind of also an experiment now what I'm doing to kind of completely not do this, like maybe even in a kind of crazy way, but really also to kind of find out if I don't do that at all, how good is the outcome? Is it worth it, or is it kind of, am I falling into another hell? Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I think it's going to take a bit of time. Yeah, because exactly, yeah. Um, I mean, it's kind of, I have this kind of rule of thumb where I say, if it looks super simple, it will still get moderately complicated. If it looks medium complicated, it will be difficult as hell. And if it looks and feels already complicated before you start, well, it's probably better not to even try it. That's kind of what experience showed me. But it's just might be only me. But yeah, it's I I really cannot remember very well if it was ever the other way around, where I completely overestimated something and then it was just super easy, no problems, nothing stupid at all. No, it was just super smooth sailing. I really can't remember it, but it might be that people just don't remember these kind of things and you just remember the bad things. I don't know. Okay, yeah, that's good. But I mean, I really I was very positively struck because I saw that you have really some really good reviews, and so I don't know your friends obviously, so maybe it was I don't think that I didn't have the feeling that it was kind of only your friends, but it was really like people really being positive about it and really kind of praising it in different kind of colors, right? I mean, it's not like, yeah, okay, it does this one thing right, that's it, and everybody kind of repeated this, but it really seemed people were really kind of um, telling it is kind of like lean and mean and like really doing the one thing that it does and like in a very nice way and seemed very intuitive. So I thought, hey, really cool, thumbs up. It's really, I think it's a good feeling. I mean, I did not achieve that in my life to be on Steam with something currently. I always, yeah, did not get far enough. So hopefully this time. But yeah, I mean, it's good. Yeah. So it seems like the inner value of the product is so good that even if you're kind of not developing it further actively, it's still kind of like good enough. And I really mean it in a good way because that's not every there's not so many products that kind of reach that stage already, right? So I mean that's really cool. Yeah. Yeah, no, but I guess that's totally clear that some of the nice reviews will also be by, let's say, people that are near to you. But no, but it's cool. I mean, it's yeah, it's nice. I think you can be proud of it. It's and the funny thing is, of course, because I think you have sometimes you have these spectacular high numbers of usage because obviously then it's running all the time for these when people use it for their like the main game. Um, and then I kind of found it funny in a positive way that a lot of the reviews then it's 1,300 hours on your product essentially, and and that's what it is. I mean, it just runs as an overlay, but I mean it's running there, and it's I mean that's cool. So that's kind of an achievement in itself because you might have one of the most long played products still because it I saw it had huge times sometimes 1,000 to 2,000 hours and for day. That's I mean that's cool. Yeah, exactly. I because I was kind of stunned. I said, and I see this review, and then I see 1,300 hours, 2,500 hours, and yeah, probably even 4,000 hours, and I think, oh wow, what the hell? I mean, it's really okay. So first of all, they're playing their kind of main game a lot. That's one thing what it tells us, but it's also and they turn on your stuff, right? I mean, they don't play it without your overlay. So they want it, they need it, find it useful, and and I think that's nice, right? I mean, just to know that the people use it and really get something out of it. I think that's kind of I think it's a nice feeling. So that's that's good. That's good. Okay, so where was I here? So if we now have the hover width, that's the first thing that we want to change. Um, let's really be now super explicit. Let's even call it the half hover width. I mean that looks a little bit stupid, but I just want to have it very expressive here, and I don't want to have this parenthesis here and stuff like that. Yeah, I mean it sounded like really the reviews really kind of gave you the kudos for like making a very streamlined product it seems, and so yeah. Yeah, but yeah, I mean, kudos to you because we all know that a lot of a lot of companies don't put the work in before they release something. So yeah, um, kind of like to polish it and to really make it stable and to really make it being a nice round product and not just being an experiment and then let's just see how it turns out in the wild, but it's like just to bring something out that is kind of finished. It's kind of a rarity already, isn't it? So so let's see why wouldn't that work? Because the age offset shouldn't really make a difference anyway. It is what it is. Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I can just totally underline that. I think it's really, I think there's even this kind of saying that perfect is the enemy of good, um, or good enough. And I think it's true. And especially because I'm also really trying now to kind of also, um, like restrain myself to not be too perfectionist because I really want to get stuff out, and I really want to kind of also, yeah, publish it. And I think I would even say from a certain perspective, I think it's very hard to get something out if you're absolute perfectionist because yeah, you can always make it better. Yeah, you can always find a new way to polish it more and more and more. And I think if you think it through, it would kind of never get out anyway. And I think yeah, then it's just this kind of way of managing yourself to still feel happy and to still be kind of content with what you do, because nobody wants to put crap out, right? And having it tested enough and all these things, but still also kind of letting go and say, well, but it still is what it is, and there will be probably some problems, and people will report it, and I will just try to solve them as quickly as possible. But I must let go at one point because otherwise I just don't release anything before I die. So, yeah. Yeah, I think so. What you say for about testing, I agree. Um, because the problem with kind of clean code is I think it is not easily possible for a human being, and it's really not met. I think it doesn't matter if you are a programming genius or if you are a beginner or whatever you are. I think it's just the limitations of our human brain, um, like with a very small stack and all these kind of things. I think just writing clean code is not enough. Yeah, I fully agree, and I think testing is just a way to go. And I think it also helps, and it kind of depends on the kind of languages you have. And I'm also a big fan of kind of like letting, for example, the compiler giving me errors before it even runs. While it can be a pain in the ass if you don't get something to compile for I don't know 10 minutes and they say, hey, what the hell? Why just run it? There shouldn't be an error because just there is a type mismatch or something like that. So I would also add this to that. So this is why I am a fan of or I'm not so much a fan of dynamic languages for bigger pieces of code because I feel like it's yeah getting tough, and then you have even more load on the testing. But there is just certain classes of errors which I think are hard to test, and then testing wouldn't be enough for me. So I think the gold standard would be to have a very in my this is just pure like subjectively my opinion is gold standard is like, of course, try to write simple and clean code, test as hell, um, and also have a strongly typed language which catches a lot of typical human mistakes just at compilation and linking step and saying, hey, this you cannot mix and match that just doesn't make sense, and you feel okay, yeah, that's true. So yeah, I agree, and I think that's one of the reasons why still some people kind of refuse it overall. And I had, it's not so many years ago, it's really just I think 2 or 3 years ago in one of my jobs and projects, I had a quite experienced software developer who was owning that company for which I worked for, and he said, yeah, I mean, he knows about testing and he kind of understands it, but he just kind of actively decided against it just because of the time. He said, like, it's just, he kind of made the calculation, which is just complete bullshit, of course, but like, okay, kind of he was thinking about it and said, yeah, it's just for me, it's just kind of not worth the time, because if I do it right, I just double or quadruple my time to work on it. And I mean, I said, yeah, but you have the whole refactoring issue, yeah, because how do you refactor if you don't have tests, right? I mean, it's really kind of, it's a walk through hell, because I mean, you change something and you have kind of no confidence at all that all the things are working. But yeah, he was kind of stubborn, and of course, I accepted. I said, yeah, well, I mean, it's fine. It's in the end, it's your company, and um, I think it's really not black and white. I think there's really, it's probably depending on the economic situation of the company, of the kind of project, of the kind of code you write, of the kind of use case that your application is for, probably, I guess. Yeah, I would not advocate against testing, but it is fucking time consuming. Yeah, it's just. I think we also made a statistic in one project where we kind of found out that like the time to code a feature versus the time to code like a reasonable suite of tests. It was, I don't know, I think it was not only like the same amount, I think it was kind of more time, as you also mentioned. I think it was, we find out if for the good tests which were actually happy and which are actually stable, it used more of our time and brain bandwidth, whatever, to write this than the actual feature. And maybe that's just it. And maybe that's not even a bad thing, but that's just it. And we just also maybe shouldn't differentiate between testing code and normal code, because anyway, it's kind of just code and you need both, and that's also fine. So that's, I think, also a way to think about it. Yeah. So, yeah. Yeah, exactly. But it's like you can place these kind of landmines in your code, and you can really, yeah, do the assertions. And the name, I think, fits perfectly. I'm asserting that this should be the case, and if it's not, it's kind of totally out of order. And anyway, it's better to probably just explode at that moment. Yeah, I agree. This is just. Yeah, I mean, this is like a super. I think your last entry here now in the chat is. I think this is almost like an endless. This is the potential for an endless philosophical discussion, even because. Um, if I just have to answer in 5 seconds, I would say, well, I think I would always opt for exiting early and very quickly, and just kind of keeping the blast radius rather small. But while I'm saying it, I know that exiting at the wrong point in time, and sometimes systems are, of course, not isolated. So maybe your program is actually kind of part of a bigger, whatever, microservice conglomerate and stuff like that. And if you're just out and maybe you do not have some redundancy, that could cause a lot of problems down the line anyway. But on the other hand, if you say, well, we are not exiting, we're trying to do some guarding, and we're trying to get still some answer back to whoever called us. This is also, then it feels a lot of like sometimes like passing the hot potato around, and who else can then deal with it. Sometimes that just totally makes sense, sometimes not. These are, I mean, this is kind of the core of kind of what programming makes fun, I guess, and hard, because this is really sometimes one answer fits to one kind of issue, and it just totally does not to another. And it's the same with exceptions. So where do you actually throw them? Where do you actually catch them? Who rethrows them? Because it's just useful and stuff like that. I also find that super interesting, and I had a lot of discussions, and there was really a lot of opinions I heard, and it's just kind of, for me, it's still like an kind of unsolved problem, like in a general way. I think there is never this hard and fast rule where you say, well, you always do that. You always exit fast, or you never exit fast. I think both is wrong and right at the same time. So, yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I had that so much in my life. And it was always interesting. And if people are still kind of nice and open, these are also interesting discussions, right? I mean, if people are very dogmatic, then these can be very not so nice discussions then. But I think it's really interesting because these kind of strategies, how you do it, when is the correct time to bail out, when is the correct time to be very controlled and say, well, I still can give you back some error code. Or the philosophical question alone of when is something exceptional, right? When is something like not expected? And yeah, we had done some discussions going on for this, like because yeah, but this is now exceptional. Another person said, yeah, but why is this exceptional? It's just kind of an error. So and yeah, and yeah, because it's in our control. It's not in our control. And then yeah, but where do you draw the line? Like what is in our control? So if the database driver has an error, is it? So you would argue it's not in our control. But on the other hand, I mean, it's still a part of our program. It's a library, so we still kind of need to kind of take probably some kind of responsibility for that. So how, because I mean we link it into our runtime essentially, and I mean it's just still now physically part of our code anyway. We just didn't write it, but so what does that mean? So is it just now exceptional, or is the network the only exceptional thing that we kind of accept as being totally out of our control? And if we're just if we're just not connected anymore, then yeah, that counts. Yeah, we wanted to reach the other service, it just wasn't there. And it really, it's kind of like an I don't know the word in English now, but it's kind of like it's what in German we would call it, like it's something that has no floor. It just you can always go deeper essentially, and you will never come out somewhere reasonably. So yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, sometimes you just have, and also if you have like 1,000 assertions in your code, there might still be a crash, and you think, okay, that's cool. So I'm sure now I will get my assertion message somewhere, and it's not, because it was the 1,001th case that you never thought of that could happen even with that PC, with that GPU, whatever. But yeah, but anyway, I still think it's better to have, for example, a lot of assertions, because if something crashed and it fell over one of those landmines, I mean, it's good. And even if it's at a client, but you can probably get the report back and they say, okay, yeah, I mean, that's interesting because I was not expecting this to be null, but it was obviously, and then that's already very, very valuable normally. So yeah. Oh yes, absolutely. I mean, I was remembering when I was introduced to TDD, and we were kind of like doing it in the most simple way. So we were actually kind of testing these typical black boxes where you really have inputs, then some kind of processing happens, and then you have output. So the perfect testable system, yeah, not some side effect hell or whatever, no, but just really something comes in and you expect something to go out. Um, but as you said, then you do mix and match different parameters and different kind of um, yeah, like how do you say, like environmental situations, and you feel okay, yeah, but if this is true and this not, and together they are true, and it's there's so many edge cases, yeah, because you don't expect the test to fail now, but it fails, and then it's kind of, you also feel happy because you feel, oh, okay, what the hell, I just found a really unexpected edge case here probably. And yeah, I think that's what makes testing feel good, because you feel, oh wow, I'm so happy I found it now in testing, right? And I did not it does not explode in 2 weeks when we go live with that or something. So yeah, I mean, I agree. I think to kind of return as early as somehow reasonably possible, I think is fine. um yeah. Yeah, so I don't know if you are kind of familiar with some of the functional languages, or also something like Erlang. I don't know, but Erlang has this very, very strong philosophy of like let it explode. I think it's even what they call it, and let it explode quick. And just don't try to kind of amend it and try to fix it at the point where the explosion kind of takes place, but just always exit as the one process that you are, because in Erlang, you just these small processes anyway, and you just kind of rely on the fact that some higher up hierarchy in the architectural sense has probably a better view of the current situation, so that it can get a better decision. And if the next higher parent, like in your architecture, cannot do it, so it will also die. But then the next higher parent might then say, okay, so my two subservices died now, so now I can do a retry logic or whatever, or I will wait for 5 minutes now, and then I will check if the network is there again or something like that. But the subordinate could never take this decision because it doesn't even know in which context it runs, for example. So I'm generally a fan of failing or returning very early and just saying, well, I just can do what you ask of me, and so now just you deal with it. And I don't do anything more, because normally I say this function normally has not the knowledge to do something useful very often, right? So yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's good, yeah, if you always keep the red wire in the correct sequence, whatever, and never hit the blue one or the black one or whatever. Yeah, it's just yeah, but we all know yeah, it still blows up. But yeah, I think that's also kind of part of the fun and part of the game to kind of we still try to you still try to be as error free as possible, kind of like you still know that you are not, because as a human, of course, you will make a lot of errors which you don't even expect. But yeah, of course, I mean, nobody tries to write bad code, of course not, but still we do all the time. And it's so funny, even if you go back, if I'm now seeing code that I wrote 2 days ago on the stream and it worked and we all were happy, we kind of were celebrating that something works. Now I'm reading it and I'm thinking, wait, what was I thinking? I mean, it looks completely stupid. I mean, it kind of works, but why? why did I do that? So it's kind of, I think this never stops to amaze me. I think I could be 100 years old and probably I would still do that. So, but yeah. So how does it look now? Still kind of useful, or is it still? Yeah, sometimes it looks like, wow, was that really me? Because it looks kind of smart. I mean, I always tend to say I try to be as not smart as possible. I know that's not a word, but kind of like to be as dumb as possible, really, because that gives me the most confidence. And I think we touched on that on the last stream as well, anyway. But I think it's really it makes such a difference if you're not trying to be too smart on that one evening, because the next day you just might find, oh my god, why did I come up with this with this concept here? Because it's whew, I remember I did it, and that I did it maybe 2 days ago, and I understood it probably, but I don't understand it now. And maybe I should have come up with something much more simple and much more naive, and yeah. So this is why I now try to not be kind of too clever at any point in time and kind of overtake myself. Because even if I understand it in this moment, probably I will not tomorrow. So, yeah, I mean, sometimes you're right. Sometimes, especially but this is more the case if it's really older code, where I finally get it why it works, because probably on first sight I see that it works, or I see the outcome and I see, okay, it works, and I try to just understand how did I do it. And I think, yeah, I mean, that was actually kind of clever. But I think this is a very fine line to be proud of yourself, because it was a good solution, and you kind of get it again, and you say, yeah, now I remember why probably I was thinking along that line. But that is a fine line. This tends to sometimes go in that direction that I'm proud of it, but it also tends to go in the direction where I think, okay, I probably should not have just stopped at this point in time where it worked, but it's kind of complicated, and it's like a little bit from the front to the back, over the right, back to the shoulder, and now it's working, and it's kind of whatever. I probably should have searched for a much simpler solution, but I just called it a day probably then. And now I'm sitting here and I have to unwind this hairball. So at least in my world, it often goes in this direction, unfortunately. So yeah, that's a very nice and poetic way to put it, to appreciate your past your past self. That's a very nice, it's a very nice way to say it. Yeah, it feels good, and kind of to tap on your shoulder and say, well, that's actually, yeah, that was clever. That was, I had a good hour back then. That was a good day. I was bright. I was bright, shining bright that day or that night. But I always kind of measure it, like how long does it take me? And I mean, if I see it 1 year later or 1 day later or one week later, and it kind of, I just get it immediately, then I'm kind of super happy. That even makes me more proud in the meantime. It's more like, okay, it's kind of so, you probably cannot reduce it anymore because that's just what it is. That's this plus that, and okay, it calls this, nothing else. It's like super lean. This is kind of what I strive now, and not like the super sophisticated structure, but it's probably what you mean anyway. So yeah, it's fine. Yeah. Yeah, that's, but yeah, but that is, I know this, but sometimes, because when you're very intense on developing your product, whatever it is, um, you're kind of the master of the universe of it, because you just test it every time, and you just run it essentially like 10,000 times a day, and you're kind of knowing it inside out. And then there's this nice effect when you finally put it into the hands of customers, friends, whatever, people who use it, that eventually, if it's good and if they use it often, they kind of they completely overtake you, right? And they just, so you degrade, you don't even know the ins and outs after 1 year, and then they are complete masters of it, and then it's kind of fun. But I think that's a very nice feeling. If you see someone explain your own software to you, I think that's kind of a funny and also kind of satisfying thing, I believe. Yeah, yeah, but I think it's very good to have this kind of, yeah. I think that's a very good way. Kind of collect all these different opinions and kind of make a synthesis of it, and try to distill the kind of, like, what is the common criticism of it, or what seems to be a common pattern of an issue here. Um, yeah, I think that's totally important, and I also think, yeah, especially for something kind of like inherently complicated and complex, like any computer game, essentially, I think it's very important to have uh, probably quite a number of people to give their feedback early on already, and like, yeah, I I'm really kind of sure about this, that this has to be some way. So this is also why kind of these, how do they call it, early access releases, I think also kind of make sense, if they are not just whatever, some cash grab or something, but it's, there is an argument for that, right? Because essentially, yeah, you can also get all these opinions and all these different kind of points of views, and but it's also probably easy to get lost. I don't know, I'm just totally unsure to do that or not, but at least I think you need a bunch of people. I think you should never kind of be totally based on yourself alone. i I guess, I think it's just, I think the product would not be as good. Yeah. 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 I mean, I have this kind of saying to myself. I am not. I mean, of course, I'm just human, and I suffer a lot if something is bad or if someone tells me it's bad. I mean, I would lie if I would say I totally don't care. But what I say and what the motto is everything gives you a result, right? So it might be that the result is not what you wanted it to be, or it's not what you expected it to be, or whatever. But it is a result, and you can analyze it, and you can hopefully constructively continue to work on it, and you learn from it. And as it is a result, like you said, you learn from it. I mean, you cannot even kind of not learn from it. I mean, you can kind of refuse to take your lesson. Of course, you can, and you can just completely ignore it and do something completely different, whatever. But essentially, it's like an kind of like a simple feedback loop even. And I think it also helps to say, well, there's no reason to be now whatever angry or disappointed or whatever. Nobody likes something or everybody's criticizing it, but you say, well, I mean, I think a critique is kind of like it's an effort for the person. I think to have a critique, if someone writes 10 lines of critique and he says, wow, that's really shit or whatever, or part of it is good but part of it is total shit, and I think, okay, well, I mean, it's really nice actually, kind of, that you took your time to formulate it. Yeah. It would be much harder for me now to learn something and to change something if you just ignore it and say, yeah, it's shit and I just don't care. But if somebody takes the time and writes, yeah, it's utter shit, I mean, even if the person finds nothing positive, I mean, that's kind of an interesting result. And you say, well, okay, that's what can I take out of it? And kind of, yeah, thank you for telling me. I mean, it's fine. And maybe there's other people who like it, and then you can just have to figure out, okay, so what what to make of it, if it's the opposite. But I agree. I think that's kind of, that sounds very cheesy now what I say, but I think it could be one of the roads to kind of success, to if you can constructively work with criticism, right? I think, like, in general, has nothing to do with development. I think it's just a matter of fact of life, I guess. But I think it's especially kind of, you're exposed if you are publishing something on a platform like Steam or whatever. Yeah. If it's a game or if it's a tool or whatever it is, because you kind of, yeah, you expose yourself with your work. And so this is kind of like, I think, of a very direct measurement of how people like it, and they are able to kind of formulate in public that it's probably shit or whatever they think of it. So that's kind of, I think it's a hard swallow. It's a pill that is hard to swallow, I guess. So, but yeah, so I think it's kind of super important to be able to work with that, right? Although I think it may not always be easy, of course. Yeah. So yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely agree. I mean, I had some discussions with some friends not so long ago where I also kind of said it in a little bit of different word. Because obviously I have a lot of friends and colleagues in the same field like IT, and people tend to say the most important thing is the actual, like, of the inner quality of the product, and that it's technically totally sound, that the testing is perfect, and that it's performing well, and it's just kind of like it's the best imaginable software, for example, that you can think of. And I also tended to say, in my experience, to say, well, I think I need to disappoint you, although we're all technicians, and I would like to kind of agree with you. My feeling is, I would even tend to say I would say that marketing and sales is even more important than the actual technical value. And it's kind of a little bit of, we don't hear it because that's kind of our field, right? So we want to be the more important part, probably. And I would say, I think if you have like the same product, and like both are the same kind of shit, whatever, or the same kind of quality, it doesn't matter, but it's just they are the same, for sure. I mean, the marketing will win anyway. Everybody will say that. But then I will say, even if the one thing, if the one product that is kind of objectively worse is probably not performing as well and stuff like that, but still, if it has a super strong marketing and sales campaign and whatever, I think it would totally outperform the better product. Yeah, because I mean, for the simple reason, nobody will ever probably get to know the better product. I mean, it's as simple as that, right? So And yeah, so fully agree. I think you're right. Sometimes more. I would say almost every time more. I I think it's the only case where this would not be true. I think is a very specific environment, a very specific setup where, for whatever reason, the product doesn't need any marketing because it's kind of whatever. It just appears and everything. Everybody kind of recognizes it anyway. But I think this is really not. It's just the exception, I guess. Um, I would say it's really important. I mean, long term, of course, if it's just not good at all, well, I mean, there will be problems. But I think it's easier to fix a broken product as long as it sells and it has a core that is kind of interesting and that is good. Then it doesn't matter if it's a game or whatever it is. I think it doesn't even need to be a software, of course. And then try to fix it, but you still have momentum and you still kind of get people excited for it and the people know it. Then you have the best product in the world, but it's just in your room here and nobody will ever know of it. It's obviously it just doesn't make sense. So I think it's really super important. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So I don't know. I think that's kind of a fact that a lot of technical people, which I am also, we don't like to hear that a lot because we believe no, we can just cook something that is just totally uh, genius or it's at least good enough, let's say, and then that's it, and then it will sell because people will just recognize it. And I'm fully aware that no, nobody will ever notice that it exists, probably, right? Especially on Steam. I mean, if I would publish a game today, probably I'm one of whatever, I don't know, 5,000 people that publish a game today. I don't know. It's maybe a little bit too much, but I think maybe not. I don't know. So if there is no marketing, I mean, nobody will ever notice it, right? So I mean, it's not, and it could really be the best game in the world, literally. But I think if I would just post it now as who I am, and I'm not a company like a big one or whatever, it's just yeah, it's just like throwing whatever a stone in the ocean. I mean, it's gone. Yeah, I guess. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I think huge competition is kind of even like a probably not strong enough, I would say. And uh, yeah, I've no idea. And I was when I was looking at your Steam product, I was also thinking, yeah, it's actually also kind of cool because you're having this niche, right? Or I guess it's a niche. Maybe it's not. I did not make a full research now, but I thought, okay, that's actually also probably cool to have this kind of tool because you are not probably having so many competitors in that specific field. So I guess you have because also some of your reviewers mentioned some of these tools. Because I'm not a shooter player, I'm not very much informed about what are the big dogs in this area because you seem to be one anyway with your product because yeah, you got a lot of praise for it. But I think it's yeah, it's better to have 10 competitors or like 20 than 10,000, right? So because even if you have 10,000 competitors and a lot of them are whatever single persons and many games are not even good, it's still, I mean, they still compete for the small amount of bandwidth of any users to just be able to see you. And it's just like you compete for a screen estate, and it's just if it's thousands and thousands of items coming out every year, it's just kind of it gets even a little bit like playing the lottery. So uh, I'm not trying to get rich here with my game or whatever, but it's still nice to see people play it. It's not just even that they buy it and you make millions out of it, but it's more like, I mean, if then just five people play it, it's also yeah, it's not so nice. It's just would be nice that it's in the hands of people. And the funny thing is, I think even if you don't ask for any money, still people will probably not even find it. So even if you're very idealistic about it, so this is kind of what it is anyway. You cannot change it. Yeah, so you can just try to still make the product as good as possible and just yeah, market it in however way or fashion. I don't know. Yeah, yeah. Okay, but that's also a huge kind of like differentiation factor. And yeah, I think it's I think in general it's always good to be in a niche. Actually, I think it's just more focused. I think if or I was once at a developer conference. It's some years ago, but one of those. It was a smaller studio, but it kind of gave a talk about how to survive as a smaller studio in in the in the harsh world. And this was already, I think it was around 2017 or something. So it's some years ago, and he said, well, just don't try to be in the fish in the pond where there is already whatever 100 sharks. Just try to find a nice little pond where there is just five other fish, and they are kind of even friendly probably. And because you will be recognized as the sixth fish, and that's fine, and you will not just be eaten by the shark anyway. And you're just one of 1,000 fishes, and it's just you just have to find your nice little pond. And it's probably much better to have some kind of share of that little pond than to have no share at all of the big ocean. Because even if the potential is probably theoretically very big, well, if you're just like an atom in the whole body, it's just it's just you don't make a real difference anyway. So yeah. Yeah, yeah. I mean, there's always a problem if like one product is already there and like sitting in the center of attention and like being already good enough. That's I mean that's I mean that's already probably also kind of proving our theory that we had both before, because your product now comes second or third or whatever, and it is objectively better. Yeah, it's quicker at startup. It's easier to get into the actual thing that you want to get done, and it probably has less overhead and so on and so on and so on. But still, you still have to convince people to change, right? And probably shell out whatever $5 or $12 or whatever, which is not a big sum essentially, but still like but you also have to you put the burden on them to kind of still learn a new product. And even if your product is super easy to learn, people are lazy like humans. It's just like, I think it's a survival strategy, I guess. So we are not even guilty of it. um yeah, it's but this, I think I sound very negative now and kind of like, but if there's no chance, why you keep doing it? But I think it's also kind of the fun, right? Because it's really hard. So it means something. So if you get a bunch of reviews, if you get a bunch of sales, if you get something out, actually, I mean, if you sit down and get something out and you put it out on Steam, I think that's already something that it's still something you can be proud of. Yeah, even if you don't become a millionaire or whatever, or it doesn't get the next big hit or whatever it is, but it's still something that not everybody just does. And it's just so. And there is also this super old saying, like, I mean, you can just control what you can control. I mean, and you don't need to bother about anything else. I mean, I just can sit here and make my game and make my engine, and I mean, the rest, it's not really under my control. I can just make the best game I can make, right? I cannot make a better game. I cannot just make the one that I can do. So, and so that also gives you peace of mind, I guess. Yeah. Yeah, well, that I mean, that's very cool. Yeah, yeah, that's also a nice thing. As you mentioned it, I also like to revisit sometimes older projects, and this is also giving you also very often a very warm and cozy feeling, because normally if you just keep doing what you're doing, you get better at it, right? So if you just kept going coding for 3 years, normally you got better at it. And when you look at some things now that seem probably very complicated back then, and you probably didn't come up with the best solution, sometimes you look at it, and that's a good case, and you feel, hey, yeah, I mean, I think, yeah, I know where I was getting there, or I know, or I feel why I was doing it that way, because I just didn't know it better. But I really definitely feel I know it better now. And that's also very interesting. And then I think this is kind of like a good moment to say, well, I think I could actually really do a revamp, rewrite, whatever, how far you want to go. Because I think I've really learned some new things that now can come in handy now that I revisit this project, because now I know another strategy for doing whatever asynchronous job systems, whatever, because it probably was out of reach back then. But now I feel like I'm feeling super like I'm feeling super safe in doing that. I'm really I've probably done that for an example, and then probably you can really do it with a kind of like a completely different approach, which just puts it to a completely new level. So yeah, so I think that can also be really satisfying, and it can also, of course, be very useful to your clients because they get a much better product. And if you're very nice and you just update the existing product, so then I think they will praise you anyway, because they kind of get a nice present, and you kind of you reposition yourself on the market with a fresh paint, so to say. Yeah. And normally these kind of products are then very mature, because it's actually really you have this solid base, you have the tests probably of a lot of use cases. So I think that's a good strategy, and I think you should not underestimate that, to kind of try to polish that stone once more and kind of try to refresh it once more. I think that's totally clever, because as humans, actually, we don't live that long, kind of. So there is only a limited lifespan, essentially, and so you can invent only so much, I think, in one life. So it really makes sense to kind of build on what you have and what is good already. Yeah. So. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Maybe it wasn't so easy to test, right? Maybe not. I mean, yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's good, and I think this is also kind of a talent that you can develop. That you get this kind of intuition that you can kind of um, you can anticipate the edge cases much better, isn't it? That I think it's kind of like this is also a skill that is developing, right? So when you start, I think you miss a lot of edge cases if you're really a beginner, with just a normal function of not having this much experience. But then you get more experience, and I think it's also you kind of developing this sixth sense of already kind of anticipating more and more edge cases, so you do not get surprised so often by something, and the asserts don't trigger so often anymore. Yeah. Yeah. And you went to the to the to the famous go-to. Yeah, I mean, yeah, I mean, go-to sometimes it's really kind of like a magic weapon, even, right? I mean, if you really want to kind of make a, how's it called, like a, what is it, like a tail efficient return or something? I mean, you just, I mean, go-to. I mean, that the problem is, I think, with go-to is you probably don't want to show it to someone that does a code review, even if it's totally kind of reasonable to do it, because I think you probably would be afraid of the discussion that would probably arise. But yeah, I mean, there's just for example, like, yeah, tail recursion. That was the term I wanted to do. But yeah, you can do a recursive function which just does not pollute the stack. It's kind of crazy, right, to do that. So crazy in a positive way as well. I would still say, yeah, you need to really be very, I would say, very, very precise and selective on how you use it. But yeah, but sometimes, but this is also what I love about programming, and also about kind of like low level languages that actually allow you to do that. Because I think, yeah, it's not every yeah, not every language has really a direct go-to without any kind of like an unconditional go-to, like not without any side effect or something. Yeah, you can always, yeah, but I call a function. No, that's not that. But it's like really no, just jump to that address in memory. Just jump there, and I know what I'm doing. That's fine. No, it's fine. Just go there and then do the next thing. I think that's cool. I like that. It's yeah, it reminds me of good old times when computers generally were a little bit simpler and more basic, and you kind of felt more being the being in control of the overall system. So yeah, 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 exactly. And I mean that's one of the reasons why I like C and I like C++ because it, as you said, I mean it allows you to go your own way, to write your own style, and yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, and there was just not so many layers. I mean, essentially, back in the really olden days, yeah, you just there wasn't even an operating system. Essentially, it was just yeah, it was just a CPU, and that was it. And I mean, obviously, there couldn't be done as much as we can do now. Of course not. Um, yeah, I fully agree. I mean, it's just like I really think it's also just a physical fact that if you have fewer layers, I mean, it must be quicker. And I know it's a little bit of a simplification, obviously, but I think it has more than a nugget of truth in it, right? So exactly, yeah. I mean, it's just like I mean, every layer, if it exists normally, it is at least some kind of function call, right? So it at least some there's some kind of processing involved. There is some cycles involved, right? I mean, otherwise the layer wouldn't exist. So at least some kind of information is passed to some function, which at least has probably some checks, and and even if not, it just passes it on. So it's still another function call and stuff like that, and it's just a memory operation at least. Um, and I'm not even speaking of the complexity that also rises because, as you said, then sometimes programs just crash and the operating system just kind of kills them, and there is sometimes no trace, there is no dump or something. It's just like, oh, what the hell? I mean, and none of your assets triggered, for example, and then you're really kind of in hell, and the customer is not happy at all, and it happens like whatever at for some users every second week, and you just sit there and you have no idea, and you feel, well, but I'm sitting on such a big stack. There is a huge operating system now, there is a huge, so I'm speaking now more of enterprise application, but there is a huge stack of libraries involved, there's a huge stack, sometimes there is what they call application service, stuff like that. It's like, well, I'm I'm just the tip of the iceberg essentially with my small little program, which in fact might not be that small anyway, but it's very small compared to the big iceberg underneath. And I guess somewhere in this 1,000 layers, because the stack is really super deep sometimes in this world. Well, something goes wrong sometimes. Well, I don't even know where to start essentially, and yeah, you tend to find the bug then at some point in time, but it's really I kind of miss to have like really a very lean stack essentially, and you just more or less directly on the CPU. Of course, you have no convenience layer as well, right? So no layer to help you and to support you. But yeah, I I think if I would have to choose, I would still kind of go into the into the nitty gritty layerless world, if it was somehow possible. Because of course it is not, because those kind of simple computers they cannot run programs that would satisfy us as people in the 21st century. But yeah, it's kind of like a more nostalgic feeling, I guess. Yeah. Yeah, thank you. And perfectly fine. So have a good late night fitness session. That these are also very meditative sometimes. And yes, as I will add you on Discord. It's fine. Yeah. Thanks a lot. And have a good whatever you do, weightlift or whatever. Have a good session. And I will continue with my bug hunt here. So let's see if I finally understand what I did. Let's see. So. So yes, I'm not sure unless you're very quick because I'm already quite tired. So I will try to get a little bit farther ahead. But normally I will be online latest tomorrow. Normally I will try to do a Sunday stream as well tomorrow. So probably if you have nothing better to do, it would be nice to see you there as well. And anyways, have a good workout and do some good sweating. So, what do we have here? We have still an unsolved riddle here. So, okay, so the left offset is actually correct. Yeah, I mean it's actually okay. Well, okay. Okay, so that actually leads me to the theory that my problem is actually not in, it's maybe not in the rendering of the drop-down layer, but it might be in the rendering of the hover background. Could that be? Because now we're actually kind of consistent. So if I'm rendering the hover background in this way, let me quickly check how to render. How do I render the overlay? Do I do some magic here, or is it actually kind of? No, it's clean. That's fine. Okay, I will also do a similar schema of how I name these items here. Okay, the drop down width, that's already okay. Okay, we have the hover width. The hover width is not even used essentially. So let's call it, no, let's not do that. Auto drop, let's call it half drop down width, and let's use that. That's a little bit nice. Just a little bit, but still it is. I mean, that should not change anything at all, of course. But what I like now is at least that my working theory of moving the drop down by half of its width is still consistent, right? And we're still flush. So the idea is, and I have to remind myself what is going on. So we're now flush with the import. Sorry, flush. Probably I should really just go to sleep. So we're flush now with the background hover element, which is the one at the top, and we're also flush here. And that's fine. Let's just quickly check once more. So the H offset is really just the respective width and the H offset. So, I mean, that's already a good thing, because now we should just be able to now fine tune it a little bit to the left, but both with the same amount. And I hope that should then work now. So if we now say render top down menu, render top menu, and then we say, let's say we move it by 4 pixels. And we do now the same. Okay, it doesn't like that. Into float, yeah. I mean, I can also do that. I can also do that. Render drop down. And we do more or less the same. Minus 4.0 float plus H offset. Let's see if that already does something here. And if it does something good. This is the question. This is the question. So come on, let's grab this. Yeah, that's nice. Yeah, I think I will. Yeah, I think that's a good. It's a good thing. So now that is much better understandable. Now we just will change that to 0.8. We'll just double that, and I would be happy with that already. So you might say I'm easy to satisfy here, but still much better, because I really believe that now the code is kind of speaking a much clearer language, right? So obviously we still have this kind of wrong measurements here. So while it looks kind of reasonable here for the file, because it's a small, it is a menu item with a very small width. So it kind of looks correct, but same for import, but for game object kind of breaks, because the top menu item is kind of bigger like this. And I mean, I'm not even sure. Let me quickly just try it out in my own IDE. I mean, it just can work. I mean, does that even make sense? So we have this weight, and this is, yeah, it's fine. Because what I want to do ultimately is, of course, have the maximum width of this drop down menu here being dependent on the, as I already mentioned, being dependent on the actual width of the menu item strings here, right? So yeah, and there's also one more thing that I just noticed. So of course, currently the whole kind of activation of the drop down menu depends on being hovering over the top menu, sorry. So if I just would go now to an actual sub menu, of course it would completely break. So this is something that I will now write down. This is then one of the last things I will do today, I guess. But it makes sense to write such findings down as quickly as possible. Issue currently the activation of the drop-down menu relies on hovering. I will probably move this here. Hovering the top menu item. We could also call it the parent menu item. So when the user moves the mouse into the actual drop down area, now it would deactivate the drop down menu, which is of course not correct. So a first quick idea is to also create a mouse scan function which accommodates the current drop down areas as well. Okay, so I think I will still commit this then, and so this is a good point to close the stream for today. As I already mentioned, normally if not something totally extraordinary happens, I will be live again tomorrow, which is Sunday, probably a little bit earlier than today, like around whatever 6, 7, 8, 8ish GMT +2 time zone, and very happy to see all of you or some of you back, and wish you a good night.